Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to Will Radio Part 26. Got a really great show for you tonight. It's early. It's only 10:44 p.m. It's because I stayed up late last night and then I took a long nap this afternoon because I was pretty exhausted. Yeah. So I'm wide awake. All right. The theme of this episode is having fun doing the things I love, or at least claim to love. I guess if I'm not having fun doing something, like you could ask like how much I love it. Well, I guess that's at the heart of it. So let's see, June 11th, 2025. And so my thesis for this episode is that having fun doing the things I love is surprisingly hard if I take it too seriously and try too hard. Okay. Maybe that's not surprise. Maybe that should be obvious, but that's something I have to keep learning. Like I sort of naturally, if I'm doing something I'm not good at, I try really hard often. You know, I either don't try at all or I try really, really hard. And trying really hard, there's some benefits to trying really hard, but there are also some disadvantages. And one of the disadvantages is it's very easy to get frustrated and not do something a lot. So let's talk about that. Haven't made a video for a little bit. I guess my last Will Radio was like a month ago-ish. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to get back into making videos. Well, one of the things is I ended up traveling quite a bit for work. It was only one trip, but it was, it was actually sort of two work things back to back. And, by the time you account for all that, that's sort of 2 weeks. So, and then there's always finishing, trying to catch up after work. I still haven't caught up with everything, but, that just takes a lot of effort, but travel stimulation, that has good things. One thing I decided to do, I thought it was kind of silly because I'm already bringing enough stuff. I brought clothes for a week and a half or whatever, so my suitcase was pretty full. But I decided to bring my Teenage Engineering OP1 with me, a little keyboard, which is sort of it's kind of like a modern incarnation of an old Casio micro keyboard from the 1980s. It'd be sort of like the Apple equivalent of that, right? Sort of overpriced, over-engineered, just like beautifully made, but also in some sense like a limited interface. That's probably the way I think about it. So I brought that with me and I played with that. I did some playing with it and I started reading the manual, like seriously. Okay, go back to being seriously. It's just like, okay, I'm going to read the whole manual. It's not that long. I think I read maybe half the manual, if that, about 40% of the manual. So I was like, I want to do some music. And during my trip, it was long enough, a week and a half, where it's like, all right, well, let me have some other goals here. So let me try to understand music theory again. So I bought a music theory book and started looking at that. That wasn't very inspiring. That book wasn't particularly inspiring, but I started looking at it. I think the OP1 manual was more inspiring. That's actually well made, even though I found a bunch of typos in it. I had a StarCraft emergency also. It's like, I should also, play some Brood War. so I bought a 10 keyless keyboard, an Apex 3 TKL from SteelSeries, wired RGB backlit, which I already have another one, but I figure, sometimes I'm at two locations, so I can bring this with me, so I leave it. So I'll always have one. And I bought another mouse. This is what did I get? I already had one of these. I have so many mice at this point. I think this is a Razer. A Razer RZ010373. It's like a pretty small mouse, but it has a nice low latency mode under Bluetooth. So I like it. It's small, very portable. You can throw it in your laptop bag or whatever. So I just played some Brood War. Not online, not ladder, just campaign. And wow, I was playing, Brood War as opposed to StarCraft 1, like original. I was playing the expansion, and I got to one level, and I just got owned so hard. I was like, I'm just playing against the computer here. Why is this so hard? But so I played a little StarCraft, and read some screenplays. Did a little reading there. I was in Rockville, Maryland, and wow, has that area changed from 25 years ago or whatever, 23 years ago. There are parts of it that I just it didn't even recognize at all. Yeah. But I had lots of interesting conversations with people, including with some friends that I got to meet up with. And one conversation we had a couple interesting conversations, but the first one was, I'll call the 9 Chains to the Moon conversation. So 9 Chains to the Moon is a book by Buckminster Fuller, and that title is, if when that book came out or was written, if you took all the humans and stacked them on top of each other, they would go to the moon, I guess, and back 9 times, or maybe it's one direction to the moon. I don't know. But 9 chains to the moon. I assume chain means backwards and forwards. So that was the sort of thing Buckminster Fuller liked to think about. And at some point, like, that came up in conversation, and there were 2 things. Like, so first of all, the friends I was talking with, like, one pointed out, it's like, oh wow, it's like interesting that you bring up this book and who wrote it and you can talk about it and stuff like that. You seem to do that a lot, which I didn't know how to respond to, because it's like, yeah, I don't know. I just, I've read a lot. I'm old. I'm not sure. There was just like a comment that I wasn't sure how to respond to, but these were younger friends, and I don't know, maybe things have changed a bit, or maybe I'm just like more of a book nerd. Certainly when I was younger, I read, oh my gosh, I read so much. But anyway, that comment surprised me a little bit, but maybe, yeah, I don't know what to think about that. I guess it's true, but then there was another part of it, which was interesting, and the same person I think made this, maybe is another person who made this comment. Maybe actually this is related. Okay, so maybe this is related. It was all part of the same conversation. So when I was talking about this book, I said it was 7 Chains to the Moon. Okay, I knew it was Buckminster Fuller and all these sorts of things, Bucky Fuller. And, I said I'd read multiple books by Buckminster Fuller. I'd read a biography of him and watched interviews with him. And of course, he's very famous in a certain time period in technological context. So to me, it wasn't surprising. Maybe his name was so weird. sort of like I remember watching Do the Right Thing, and Giancarlo Esposito plays Buggin' Out, and I liked him in other things as well. Like he's a great actor, and I remember having a conversation with one of my friends. I said, "Oh yeah, there's this really great actor." I'm like, "You mean Giancarlo Esposito?" He's like, "How in the world did you know that actor?" It's like, well, I guess the name is a little unusual. It's a memorable name, but Giancarlo's not that hard a name. And then my friend's like, I can't believe you know this. No one else would know this actor. And then the 2 or 3 other of our friends came, and my friends, oh yeah, there's this actor. And then also Giancarlo Esposito. So that's kind of how I felt. Like, yeah, Buckminster Fuller. Like, I don't know. I'm into, the 30s and 40s and 50s, 60s, 70s technology in the United States, the history of that. So, of course, I know who Buckminster Fuller is. And, of course, I've read some of the books and all that sort of thing. So I guess that's part of it. And also, I think we're certainly in computing, I don't think we really study history that much, most people into computing. And there's this idea, like, well, nowadays with LLMs, anything before 2017 is irrelevant. I've heard plenty of people say that with sort of modern generative AI. It's like, oh, this is from before 2017. Or nowadays, this is before GPT 3.5 or something. So it seems like that window of the cutoff between irrelevant and relevant for generative AI, people see that as like is very tight and probably closing. But I'm interested in programming languages and logic and mathematics and physics and things like that, and theory of computation. All that stuff goes back, at least until the 1930s, for theory of computation and lambda calculus and all that. Schoenfinkel came up with combinatorial logic, I think, by 1920 is the evidence. 1920 had combinatorial logic, so maybe even before that. So that might be part of it as well, is that I happen to know about this like weird sounding guy in this weird sounding book, and the stuff from 1940s and whatever. So that might have been part of it. But as part of this conversation, I guess the question was, well, how do I do that? How can I bring up that name or that book? And I said, well, I know certain things relatively well. So I've read multiple books by him. I read biography by him, about him, that kind of thing. But I said that there's also a technique I use constantly. I think there's more generally about our conversation, but that came up in Buckminster Fuller also, which was, if I talk about something in a conversation, I have the theory of, the Ronald Reagan quote the Russian quote that he loved, that he would always say back to Gorbachev, which is trust but verify. So if I'm talking about Buckminster Fuller, or I'm talking about ribosomes, or mitochondria, or whatever it was, we had a pretty wide ranging conversation, then I'm happy to talk about those things. And if there's something I think I've got the details right, I'll be more confident. But for some things, I'm like, I think it's something like this, but I don't remember. But either way, even if I'm confident, I'm going to look it up either afterwards or sometimes during the conversation, usually afterwards. And just to try to refresh my understanding, make sure I really get it. And here's one example. Is I said the book was 7 Chains to the Moon. That was the title. It was 9 Chains to the Moon. Okay. Now, I guess one question is it wrong that I said 7 Chains to the Moon? In some sense, it's wrong. In another sense, I got kind of the essence of it right. In that case, I give myself half credit. There are other things I said that I think were just like wrong. And another part of this is, if I say something wrong in a conversation with someone and I find out that it's wrong, I try to let them know. Or maybe I say something that's like technically right, but contextually it's wrong, that sort of thing. So I'm trying to check myself all the time. And partly I'm trying to give myself, trying to understand, like, where do I make errors? I mess things up all the time. I make mistakes all the time. So where do I make mistakes? Where do I make mistakes for predictions? I predict things all the time, and a lot of times I'm just like really bad at predicting or whatever. So that's kind of my inbuilt practice to check myself all the time. I mean, I just do this all the time. And so I was talking to one of my friends about this, and they were surprised. They said they hadn't heard someone do that before. And I said, well, what do? You don't do something like that. And he said, well, if I'm not confident of something, I just won't say it, which I thought was interesting. And certainly there are plenty of things I won't talk about because I just don't, I don't have any confidence at all. I know something about it. But there are too many things that I'm interested in that if I never opened my mouth for anything where I wasn't 100% confident in it, certainly I would never talk about anything in biology because we only have partial understandings of things like biology. Like even if it's written in a bunch of textbooks and papers and stuff, and I believe it's true and I could point to evidence, that doesn't mean it's true, right? So that's important to understand. Just because something's written down, I might be 100% confident saying that doesn't make it true. So that's a different thing. So I would rather have a conversation where I try to check myself and try to get the details right. And then I learn from it. And it's like not to try to win an argument or impress people. It's just to try to improve my own understanding. And then after the conversation, I realized like, oh yeah, I do that anyway, even if it's not a conversation, right? I'm constantly looking things up or double checking things. And I'm often surprised like how wrong I am. And like a good example of this is I'll watch a movie that I haven't seen in 25 years or something. Maybe I'll explain the movie to a friend and then I'll watch it. I'm like, maybe I didn't remember that movie as well as I thought I did. I just thought that was an interesting conversation, partly because that's a technique I use and just don't even think about it, but I guess not everyone does. And just brought up the question like, well, what should you talk about and how much confidence should you have? And should you keep your mouth shut if you're not 100% confident? But my friend said, well, it's like, I'll try that more. I probably should talk about more things. So that was 9 Chains to the Moon. And then another conversation we had, the same group of people, was about music theory. And I admit, I feel really dumb studying music theory because like there are things like time signatures. And it's like, okay, this is 4/4. Okay, but there's also 2/2. And there's 3/4. And it's like, well, could you have 3/3? Yes, I think. And it's like, okay, what's the difference between 4/4 and 2/2? And all these people, I was talking to a group of musicians, some of whom have like, master's degrees in music theory. And they're trying to explain to me, it's like, dude, and they get the metronome app and stuff. And I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't understand this at all. It's like, don't you hear the downbeat or the upbeat and the strong beat? And I'm like, well, why do you need a strong beat? And then finally it's like, oh, okay, this is more like observations of what people in Western music, what they tend to design them. It's more like, this is what you tend to see in Western music. And then because those rules, exist, I guess, the sort of observational rules, then people use them. Sort of like compositional rules for writing. Like, it doesn't have to be that way. You could do whatever you wanted. But anyway, so that was an interesting conversation. But I kept like trying to drill down on some of these concepts and like, well, why do we need a measure at all? Like, why do measures exist? And why do you have to have a strong beat? And then I came up with the analogy of frame shifts in DNA. Like, oh, okay, so you have this upbeat at this like the first beat of the measure, and you could mess with that, but that's kind of like in DNA if you insert a base pair. Now, like the RNA transcript has a frame shift mutation or whatever. Yeah, that got into the conversation that was also part of, like, am I getting the details right when talking about things like frame shifts? Fortunately, we had someone with a PhD in genetics, so he could correct my terminology. So some of that I got right, some of it I got basically right, and then some of it is like, yeah, that was a little off. So anyway, those were interesting conversations, but there was a meta conversation part of it, like, epistemological or epistemological, or whatever you say. It's like, well, how do we know any of this stuff is true, or how do we judge our own confidence in things? How do we improve our confidence? And sort of similar in nature, I guess, or seems related. I was talking to a friend who's a researcher, and we were doing some thinking about research topics in programming languages. And my friend, said that a common acquaintance of ours had said that I'm deep when it comes to thinking about like implications in research. And I asked my friend, well, do you think I'm deep? And my friend said yes. And I thought about that. That's sort of an interesting observation, because for the music theory conversation, when I kept trying to go back, like, okay, what is a measure? Why do you need a measure? What's an upbeat? Why do you need an upbeat? I kept going back over and over and over again, trying to get all the details like figured out. And the musicians there is like, well, this is very interesting, because I've never seen anyone who's trying to understand like those details at the level you are. Because it's like, well, why can't you change it? Why can't it be this way? Or why can't you do it this way? And they was, oh, well, you could do it that way. However, it's normally done this way. It's like, okay, why? Right. And I guess that's that goes to an aspect of my personality, or how I try to learn or understand things, is I get like very uncomfortable and annoyed. Really annoyed is a good way to put it. If I just don't understand like the fundamental details. And a lot of people, or a lot of times, I think it looks like I'm just being pedantic or annoying. Which I agree, it can be annoying, but I'm just trying to understand, like, well, why do we need measures, really? My musician friends was like, well, it's like having paragraphs, sentences and paragraphs. And I was like, well, look at ancient Chinese or Japanese. Like they didn't have that. They had this like vertically oriented script. They just kept going. In fact, punctuation's like a relatively recent invention. And, so we kind of went back and forth on that. But this is something, it's like, okay, well, that's probably true for something I really care about. I'm interested in the deep. I really want to understand the fundamentals, and because I want to understand what the what if, like what if you change one of the fundamentals? That's like the research feeling. I don't think it was always like that in quite this way, but maybe it's the researcher in me at this point. Like I want to know why the fundamentals are like that, and partly because I want to know, well, what happens if you change one of those assumptions. To me, that's like the heart of research, is like, well, what if you change this thing that everyone just assumes is there, right? So anyway, I don't know if this is interesting to anyone else, but I find it interesting because I'm trying to figure out like how I think. And often it's when I'm talking to other people and they're like, well, that's a little different. I haven't seen anyone do it that way. It's like, okay, well, I'm probably about to learn something about myself. Yeah. So those were fun conversations. Let's see. Less caffeine. Yeah, less. I've been feeling stressed out during the day, especially during calls, of which I've got a zillion Zoom calls and stuff. And I thought it was just like the news and stuff like that, work pressure. But like today, I barely looked at the news and I still felt stressed out about the same time of day. And I thought, I woke up, I got coffee, and then I just made and drank like, I don't even know how many cups of caffeinated tea right in a row. And now I'm like, shaking almost. Maybe I shouldn't drink caffeine to that extent. You know, maybe I could try experiment where I cut back on the caffeine a little bit. It's just so easy for me to make cup after cup of caffeinated tea that, or to grab another coffee. It's like, I'm gonna try a little experiment there. I suspect there's some physiological aspect of that, because I'm not stressed out like at night in the same way. You know, it's sort of after I've had 6 cups of tea. Yeah, no, that's an experiment I'll try. Right now I'm having some decaf tea. Been doing lots of miniKanren hacking recently. That's cool. That's been fun. I saw on Hacker News there was like a blog post from someone who's got a pretty interesting set of posts, but it was on short programs, on how short programs are interesting. You know, and one of the short programs was the 3x5 card, 3x5 inch index card version of the scheme interpreter from my talk, The Most Beautiful Program Ever Written. It's like, oh yeah, definitely we'd carry this program around. And there was an interesting comment, which was a criticism of that program. They didn't criticize me or the talk, but they criticized that program. I said, I really dislike that interpreter because it's not meta-circular. It uses p-match or whatever, pattern matcher. And I take that comment. I mean, I didn't take it personally. I thought it was a well-written comment. It didn't attack me or anything. And even if it had, I think I would have taken it in the right spirit. But that's true. Like that little interpreter is not truly meta-circular, because even though it's scheme and scheme, there's this whole magic of p-match and hygienic macros and all this stuff that you have to understand and implement to make it truly meta-circular. So, okay, well, I really should have a meta-circular scheme interpreter. So been looking into versions of that with hacking friends and trying to get a better sense that the smallest meta-circular interpreter I've seen is still like way more complicated than that little 3x5 inch interpreter. Now I know that there's like a, Justine.lol or whatever has a tiny Lisp with garbage collection in some ridiculous number of bytes. And so I know you can do like super code golf and everything like that. I don't know what the semantics of that Lisp are, but I want it like a scheme and scheme, one where I can mess around with it and extend it and hack it and teach it to other people maybe, or relationalize it. So I don't want like the code golf version like that. I want something very minimal. And I know bootstrapping, Alan Perlis has that programs, epigrams in programming or whatever it's called, where one of the epigrams was an adequate bootstrap is a contradiction in terms, right? So, so like it's always going to be awkward when you make something metacircular. It's either gigantic and super complicated, or it's very small, which means that you don't have catter or something, like you don't really have enough in the language, or you hard code all the primitives instead of having an environment, initial environment, stuff like that. There are a lot of trade-offs to be made, but still I would like to see a really nice short, truly metacircular scheme interpreter. I should look at like some of the SICP stuff again. But they are more complicated. But anyway, I want to have a truly metacircular miniKanren. And so I've got mediKanren, what I did with Baroth. So that's towards a miniKanren. I'm back to exploring the shallow embeddings of miniKanren, and trying to think about that again. But so I'm thinking about the metacircular artifacts for both miniKanren and scheme. Looking at reflective towers, what does that mean relationally? That's been fun. And I've had this feeling also that I want to do some fun hacking like Barliman. Like working on Barliman was super fun. And working on the original standalone UI for mediKanren was super fun. Both of these are interactive GUI type things, but they're backed by something relational. And so it's like kind of, I wasn't saying interactive, GUI, relational. Those are kind of the three things I was thinking that's fun. I've got an idea for a type of program transformation editor. I've been thinking about that and making some paper prototypes. So yeah, that might be something fun to work on. I'm not sure, but even though my GUI building skills are rudimentary, I find that really fun. It reminds me of when I was first learning to program the Mac. I don't know, under System 7 or whatever, System 6, quite a while ago. But yeah, I thought the GUI stuff was just really fun. So there's something inspiring about an interactive GUI, and the relational stuff, tying it to the relational stuff, I think is fun. Yeah, I've been watching lots of Criterion Channel, which I think is a great collection of movies. I had a subscription to this years ago, and I didn't understand that the movies didn't go away because they curate it. And so I just thought, whatever they're showing that month, that's it. And then they go away. It's like, no, they're still there. Or at least most of them. I don't know, maybe they rotate some out occasionally, but so I've been, they have a series right now, which is film noir and all that. And so I talked about this last time. One of the movies I watched, I don't think I mentioned this one, was The Big Clock from 1948. And I was watching it and I realized this is the same plot as No Way Out, 1987. Yes, it is. And then there's a French film called Police Python 357 that also is based on The Big Clock. And The Big Clock was a novel from Kenneth Fearing from 1946. So The Big Clock was actually quite a good movie. No Way Out, I love No Way Out, Kevin Costner movie. That's a great movie. You really feel the pressure on that one. I haven't seen Police Python 357, so I can't comment on that, but it'd be interesting to see it. And because I've been watching all these Noir, I've been kind of getting into reading these old pulp stories. And I've read Raymond Chandler novels, that sort of thing. I thought, okay, well, I'll read a Mickey Spillane. So I got I, the Jury, which is the first Mike Hammer novel, and I started reading it, and I hated the writing, and I hated the character. I hated everything about it so much. I was like, okay, I'm not going to read this novel. I really despised Mike Hammer. I just couldn't stand that character. So it's all right. Well, let me try, because I'm sure they can't all be this bad. So I read Red Harvest by Dashiell Hammett, and this was much earlier than, I guess, the time period I was thinking of pulp. So this is like 1929, where I usually think of like film noir, at least, usually like the 40s or something, maybe 50s. So 1929, that's like pretty early. So Dashiell Hammett didn't write that. Stopped writing pretty early on. But Red Harvest, now that's a much, much better book. Much better writing, much more interesting character. The Continental Op is supposed to be like a Pinkerton detective or something. Apparently Dashiell Hammett worked for the Pinkertons for a while and then got disillusioned with them. Although I've read that maybe some of his claims maybe weren't entirely true. And I don't know. But Red Harvest, that's like legitimately that's an interesting book, and about 2/3 of the way through, it has a really shocking development and scene that sort of took me out of the pulp apart. And I was like, oh, wow. this is a really interesting book. So I liked Red Harvest. The Jury. I just couldn't stand it. Forget it. Speaking of pulp, I've been reading Conan the Barbarian stories by Robert Howard. We'll talk about an interesting character. Not Conan, but Robert Howard. But there's a story called The Tower of the Elephant, which I've read twice now. I really like this. Really like this story. It's just, dripping with atmosphere. And it also has sort of this cosmic perspective in some ways, and also in some ways has a lot of emotion and sadness and that sort of thing. So I just thought it's very interesting. It's like very different than like the Conan movies with Arnold. I felt it's much stranger. Apparently, let's see. So for The Big Sleep, Raymond Chandler, if I'm getting this right, Raymond Chandler wrote The Big Sleep screenplay for that, and he also, I think, wrote the Blue Dahlia script that had Veronica Lake. I think that was his first Hollywood script. I think I'm getting this right. But anyway, I thought, okay, well, let me see a Veronica Lake movie. I don't think I've ever seen a Veronica Lake movie. I mean, I know of Veronica Lake. It's like sort of an icon, but I've never seen a movie with her. Criterion Channel didn't have Blue Dahlia, but it did have I Married a Witch, so I watched that tonight. It's from 1942. It's supposed to be a sort of, screwball romantic comedy that begins with witch burning. I don't know how funny it was. There were a couple of funny moments, but I think it had like a very 1942 sense of humor. Yeah, it was okay. It was interesting to watch a Veronica Lake movie. It was also interesting just to see all these 40s movies, to see how they're made versus what we see more recently. I didn't love it. One of the worst movies I've seen, but now for this month on Criterion, they have Gene Hackman tribute, since Gene Hackman passed away recently. And they had Night Moves from 1975, which I don't think I'd ever even heard of that movie. And I watched it. I was like, that was a very 70s movie. It was controversial in a lot of ways. And it also, the ending part of it, there are some parts of it where it's like, wow, that's really, if you start thinking about the plot of this movie, it probably best you don't think about the plot too much. And also I got confused with the characters and something about the way it was edited, the way it was cut. Either the editor really thought the audience was smart or just like wasn't edited that well, because it'd be like, okay, he's either in California or Florida now, and I can't tell which, stuff like that. There'd be these little cuts, and it's like, okay, I guess they just like left out some of the transition or some of the markers that would let you know where you are, and also some of the characters. I had trouble keeping track of the characters and their relationship. I had to go back and kind of read about it afterwards. And to be honest, it didn't make that much more sense. So like, wait, but what about that instance? Like, that doesn't really make sense. But like a lot of noir. So this is like a 70s neo-noir movie. Was it The Long Goodbye with Elliot Gould? That was like a 70s noir. Neo-noir. Like most neo-noirs, I don't think the plots, or noirs, I don't think the plot's all that important. So apparently for For the big sleep, someone asked Raymond Chandler who killed a certain character. I won't say who. And Raymond Chandler apparently said, "Oh, I forgot about that one." Like he didn't care. It doesn't matter. It wasn't about the whodunit, and that's like with Twin Peaks, right? It's like when they were making Twin Peaks, who actually was the culprit? Like it didn't have anything to do with it. Like that was not the point of it. Another movie I watched on Criterion was Debs from 2004. Now the fact that that's on Criterion sort of surprised me at first, although after thinking about it more, I guess it's not that surprising. But this is like a send up of Charlie's Angels, and when I first started watching it, I'm like, I don't know if I could watch this. The production values are pretty low, and it was like very, very over the top special effects type things. But then it's like, okay, I get what they're going for. The audio seemed kind of messed up, and that's one thing that I have noticed, that sometimes like you hear people in a restaurant, right? But it sounds like it's just 4 actors on a stage, right? With no background, the acoustics or such. And then even then somehow the speech is garbled. It was like that level of sound and parts of it. But as I got into it, it's like, all right, this movie is as much, it's got more spirit to it than I had thought. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It was, it's not Citizen Kane, but it's not trying to be. So I enjoyed that movie, and it had some really good soundtrack in it. And the closing sound, closing song for like the credits, or is I really like. It's called "When Do Yo Play," not "You Play," "Yo Play." "When Do Yo Play" by a band called Arizona, and the album's called Spooky Memento. And I saw like the album was 2008, but the song was 2006 or something. But Debs came out in 2004, and it had the song. So I don't know, it was a little hard. And naming your band Arizona turns out to be really, really hard to find anything about this band. But they had like a very punk sensibility. I don't know if they'd call themselves punk or not. I don't know if this band still exists. Probably not. But I really like this song, partly because it's got electronic music sounds in it, but I really like the vocals. So part of it is very punkish, and there are 2 people singing, and it's like rough, and they're not in sync with each other. It's like very, very punkish. And then there'll be like little snippets where the main vocal, like the female vocalist, she like starts singing for real, and then maybe they'll add some reverb or something. And so the like that dissonance, I guess, between the punk singing and then like, okay, now she's actually singing for real, just for like a second or two, like just for like 3 seconds or 2 seconds, so like she's singing for real. I don't know. I think it has a lot of interesting texture. So something about those sorts of songs. It reminded me a little bit of the Orthotonics Luminous Biped song I really like. So, yeah, I've been listening to some punk also, and I bought another book when I was traveling by Henry Rollins. So I've read Get in the Van, but I got Black Coffee Blues, which is an interesting collection. So it talks a lot about life on the road, and for him being on the road, at least at the time, like late 80s, whatever. I think that was a way for him to keep his demons in check. So, the rest of his band, the Rollins band, I guess at that time, or maybe it's early 90s even, they they were like, okay, we want a break, or, you know, it's really cold in Europe. Why do we want to go touring in winter in unheated venues or whatever? And they'd be like, no, 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 no. That's it. That's it. The misery of the road. That's like why you do it. And so that's sort of like a masochistic aspect of it. But you know, being in a by himself in a hotel room, you know, in the middle of some European city where no one knows. I mean, he doesn't know anything about the language. He can't understand anyone. That isolation appealed to him. It reminded me a little bit of traveling in Japan, actually. I know a tiny bit of Japanese, but certainly most of the time I have no idea what's going on if I'm in Japan. And it's some sense like the complete outsider, but the very outsideness sort of makes it different than being an outsider when you're around people who, you know, like I could go to a coffee shop and or wherever and understand, you know, in the United States and understand what everyone's talking about or whatever. But then if someone sits down and talks to me for half an hour, it's like a pretty good chance I'm going to feel like, okay, either this person's an alien or I'm an alien. Like we just see the world completely differently. Right. And so like we might look similar. We're both speaking the same language. Maybe we grew up in similar places, whatever, but somehow we just fundamentally have a different view of the world. And being somewhere where you don't speak the language and the culture is very different sort of immediately puts you in a position where, you know, it's more like now you can see what's in common with other people as opposed to like what's different. So anyway, I found that an interesting read. Another book that I got another copy of recently. I've been getting copies electronically. It makes it, you know, some of these books I have paper copies somewhere, probably in storage. But I just wanted to read at least part of this book again, Up in the Old Hotel by Joseph Mitchell. And this book came out in 93 apparently, but it's like a collection of his writings that are much older. These stories are not from the 90s. These stories are from like the 30s or 40s or something. And there's one story. So basically he was writing about eccentrics in New York City in sort of the middle of the 20th century, or maybe in the 1930s or 40s. And you know, these are also often people who are like down and out, or, you know, there's something unusual going on with them. And the stories are very interesting. The people are very interesting. And you know, supposedly it's true. This is not fiction. This is him, you know, acting almost as an anthropologist. But one of the stories is called Hit on the Head with a Cow. I just love this story. It's like worth this. I mean, the book is great, but it's worth getting the book somehow to just read this story, Hit on the Head with a Cow. So it's a short story, but I just love that so much. Yeah. And then the other thing, which, you know, as always, in the back of my mind is, you know, trying to get back to writing a book, or in particular, the book, Imperishable Wonderland of Infinite Fun. Whatever that book is, whatever that means. So I, you know, the other day got an electronic copy of On Writing by Stephen King. It's, I think, at least the third copy of the book I've bought twice in paperback. If you don't know this book, it's a very good book. A lot of it is biography, like autobiography of Stephen King. Now, of course, he's a writer, so a lot of it's about his life and things that have happened to him and how writing has fit in. And then he has like sections on advice, like advice on writing. Some people don't like the book because they just think it's going to be a writing manual. And they're like, well, why am I reading about Stephen King's childhood or whatever? What is that? But if you just know that and take that into account, I think it's actually a really interesting book. And he says, if you want to be a writer, you must do two things above all others: read a lot and write a lot. Okay, well, so I'm thinking about that. And he says, how in the world are you going to write if you don't read? This is different than the advice that Orson Welles had for filmmakers, which is like, you can watch too many movies. And I guess Orson Welles' view was kind of like, you'll end up being like Quentin Tarantino, where your movies are about movies to some extent. And I think Orson Welles had a different view. Now, Orson Welles didn't seem to think that about the theater or the play or Shakespeare, as far as I could tell. And I don't know to what extent Orson Welles even believed that. He said a lot of things. But Stephen King says, you should always be reading. Like, you should be reading hours a day in addition to writing, like, for him, 3 hours a day or more. So, that's not a surprise. Like, I do want to be a writer. As an academic, I am a writer. I have to write papers and reports and communicate in various ways. So I am a writer. I'm a professional writer. Like, I write for my job. But I want to get better. And in particular, I want to be able to write a larger range of things. And I want to write more and better. I'd like to get to the point where I felt about writing the way I do about like programming scheme or miniKanren or something. So that's something I've been thinking about. And it's not the first time I've been thinking about this. If you followed me at all, like, I've been thinking about this a long time, for a very long time. Well, one of the stories that Stephen King tells in his book is about his son Owen, that when Owen was growing up, he wanted to get a saxophone and learn how to play saxophone. Okay, so apparently this was Owen's idea, and so they got him a tenor saxophone and lessons with a player. And after a certain number of months, Stephen King talked to his wife Tabitha and said, "Why don't we see if he still wants to do it or if he wants to quit?" So they asked him, "Do you still want to play, or would you prefer not to?" And he's like, Owen's like relieved, like, yeah, let me, sorry. I felt guilty because I asked for the saxophone. And Stephen King said he could tell that Owen was not going to be a saxophonist. And the reason was Owen would only play when he had to for like his lessons or his teacher or what, recital or who knows what. Probably not even the recital point, but like, he was supposed to take lessons. There's a lesson coming up. It's time to practice. And so he would practice. And I know this because I took guitar and lessons, and it's like, oh yeah, I've got a guitar lesson in like 2 hours. Okay. How do you make this chord again? Right. Stephen King was like, well, if he were into the saxophone, like the way some people say, get into electric guitar, he would be playing with it, right? Like he wouldn't just be playing with he wouldn't be playing the saxophone only during official practice time. Like he would be messing around with it and trying to learn songs on his own, whatever. And the fact that he wasn't playing with it, there was no play there, meant that Stephen King was like, okay, this is not for him. Like, maybe something else is for him, but this isn't it, because he's not attracted to it enough where he wants to play. And I totally agree with this, like the importance of play. And one of the things that really comes through with this book is, Stephen King talks about like all the hard parts of writing and being sick of a version of the book where you just want to drop kick it, that type of thing. All those things that, I'm very familiar with. But one thing that really comes through is that he actually really likes writing. He has a lot of fun writing. And he has fun reading. He just loves reading. He's not reading to become a better writer, although that's a side effect. He's reading because he loves reading novels. He loves stories, and he loves writing as well. And so, that really comes through. And so that I think is important. And I think I mentioned this before, the advice Michael Jordan had for parents who wanted their kids to get good at basketball. He said, just let them play, like let them have fun, let them find the joy in it. Like they'll get good. They'll get better if they're having fun. They'll play a lot and they'll want to get better. And it reminds me, a long time ago when I was in middle school and high school, I joined a club for target shooting, and I got into that for a number of years. I even went to the Olympic Training Center. I was never like super good at it, but I did it long enough and hard enough that I was getting better. At some point I started meeting Olympians and I was like, okay, there's like a different level to this, and I'm not interested in doing this at that level. Yeah, so it was interesting meeting people who had won, like gold medal in the Olympics or silver medal in the Olympics, that sort of thing. It's like, oh, okay, so that's what it's like when you're at that level. But at one point, someone who ran one of these training programs where I went to like a camp for it. What he told someone else, which I heard later, was he tries too hard. And that was totally true. Like I was trying my very hardest all the time. And that was like not good. I don't know how to explain it. Like there was nothing relaxed about it. Right. It was just like by force of will, I was going to get a perfect score every time. And I didn't. There was not like too much fun in it in a way. It was like, okay, gotta be perfect every time. And compare that to my friend Toki's nothing precious philosophy for art. And also it reminds me of, I think I mentioned this before, probably, my brother showed me a documentary about these two German brothers climbing in Yosemite, and they're super full of angst and, are always yelling and arguing, and, one of them gets injured and there's all this pathos, and they're like, well, let me show you another climber, and it's Alex Honnold, and he's like, all shucks, and here he's climbing without a rope. He's climbing the same things, except he's climbing without a rope. Yeah, and just like how nonchalant he is about that. So that's something I felt like, I'm trying too hard with the writing or other things that I want to get good at. Like I want to get good at them, but I'm trying to get good at them by like being perfect at it. And that's it's like, even when I'm not trying to be perfect, I'm like very intentionally, it's like, well, I won't be perfect. I'll intentionally be bad or intentionally mess around. It's like, compare that to how I do like scheme and miniKanren stuff, right? Because that's really what I want to have, that feeling for writing or making music or Japanese or even making videos or drawing, playing Brood War, whatever it is. And I've been trying to observe myself, what don't I do? So for both Japanese and for writing, like writing a book, I've done things like I wake up at 4:30 every morning, right? Like the Navy SEAL, thing. Or like, all right, I'm at the gym by 4:30. Here, let me post a photo of my wristwatch, proving it. I'm at the gym. So I've tried doing that and tried like writing and, studying kanji and stuff. 4:30 usually turns into 6, turns into 7:30, but the same idea, right? Like I'm going to get up early. I'm going to force myself to like do this thing, right? And, I'll do that for a little while. And in some sense, okay, well, yeah, I'm spending time on it. But then when I think about it, it's like, well, is that how I do things like scheme and miniKanren? is that how I do the things I'm actually like known for, it's like, no, it's not at all how I do that. Like if I get up at 4:30 and I'm hacking on miniKanren, that's because I'm like so excited about something, right? Or that I haven't gone to sleep because I'm so excited that I'm just like working on it. I'm not going to wake up at 4:30 in the morning to like go to the coffee shop and do miniKanren. Like that doesn't even make sense to me. If I'm really excited about saying, yeah, okay, I'll get up a little bit early and go and maybe like write a bunch of notes myself. But that's not like something I'm going to do for weeks at a time. Like that would do like once or twice and then, fire up Emacs. And I don't like force myself, okay, I'm going to write, scheme for 3 hours every morning or miniKanren for 3 hours every morning. It doesn't work like that at all. Or I'm going to write, a certain number of lines of code, like that's my line count or word count or something. And I don't do that. It's more like, there are times I'm doing scheme and miniKanren and there's times I'm not. And I'm at the point where I can, dive into scheme and miniKanren anytime I want. And it doesn't take time for me to get back. It's not like, oh, I forgot scheme or I forgot miniKanren. How do you do that again? I was like, no. I might forget how to do a B to GMK video. Like, okay, well, what exactly did I cover last time? I might have to, refresh there, but that's a different thing than like, I don't remember miniKanren. Yeah. Whereas like with the kanji or the writing, it's like, oh, forcing myself to do this. And, even playing StarCraft, like Brood War is so tough, especially ladder. Oh man. It's like, I know I'm going to get beat up if I go on ladder. It's just going to be really hard. And music, like, okay, I play around with the OP1 or with Logic Pro, but I'm still not at the point where I'm just like having fun with it. Probably the most fun I've had is just like singing or making noises or, like verbal stuff. So I think I want to play around with that, like vocoder stuff or weird sound effect or weird effects. I could sing punk, or anyone could sing punk, right? So that song sort of inspired me. It's like, well, I could do that, right? And anyone can sing punk. But there's what I would call, okay, so there are things like writing, Japanese, music, drawing, Brood War ladder. Those are sorts of things that I want to do more, and I want to do it in kind of like a relaxed way and have fun. Yeah. And Japanese, I was thinking about it, it's not just like learning kanji or speaking Japanese. I'm just interested in Japan, so Japanese is like a wider notion than just studying the language. But I've been having fun speaking Japanese. Like when I was traveling, I was listening to some of the Pimsleur courses, and I was just like, in the hotel room speaking Japanese, like, oh, that's fun. And so one of the things I was thinking with Japanese is there's like someone on YouTube, I think he's from Germany, and he spent time in Japan and married a Japanese woman, but he makes these funny videos where, he's got the voice of this Japanese like samurai or something, he's saying these ridiculous things with a super strong Japanese voice, like a voice actor or seiyuu. So I was like, oh, okay, well that's someone having fun with the language, right? So I could do that. I could listen to the Pimsleur course, and then when I'm speaking, I could, have all sorts of funny voices and just have fun speaking Japanese. It was fun. I don't know how to explain it. It's like, that was like the first time it's like, oh yeah, it's fun speaking Japanese. Like Japanese just has a cool sound, right? I don't know. Just like saying these little stock phrases. I was having fun with it. So that's like the right attitude, I think. And there's something I think of as like the Friday night, Saturday night attitude, which is, okay, well, for a lot of people, I don't know what their idea of a Friday night is or a Saturday night is. Maybe it's going out. These days, maybe post-COVID, no one does that anymore. They just like hang, they just like watch Netflix or something. I'm not sure, but my idea of a fun time is like, hey, I've got an idea for some miniKanren hacking, or I'm going to make something kind of like Barliman, or whatever it is. That's one of the things I like, or, do some Japanese or whatever. But in particular with programming, I feel that very strongly with, oh, okay, now I got like a free night or two where I can mess around with these ideas. Like I've got this idea for saying a miniKanren. I want to explore it. So that's what I call like the Friday night, Saturday night attitude. Like, oh wow, got the whole weekend. Can explore some area of computation that's really enticing. And I really like that. That's like my idea of a great weekend. Great Friday night, Saturday night. And the way I take it is like, it's not like that's the only thing I can do. And, maybe I'll take some breaks and watch some StarCraft or watch a movie or something like that, listen to some music. And I'll probably likely listen to music while I'm programming. There's also a hack attack, as Jerry Sussman says, have a hack attack. That's also a type of attitude. But I actually like the Friday night, Saturday night attitude. It's just like a very laid back. It's like, oh yeah, it's just like have a fun night. And I did that a long time ago when I was living in an apartment. It's like Friday night, turn on the X-Files, and I guess I don't know if it was on Friday night or whatever, but whenever X-Files was on, and I'd be doing some programming with X-Files on. That was just super fun. And also, I think about the notebooks and the special paper and the fountain pens and the special keyboards and all this stuff. When I'm hacking on miniKanren, like none of that matters. I don't have to have a special pen, special paper. I don't have to have a special keyboard. I don't have to have a keyboard at all. I could just like think about it. And then try to figure out, like turn the ideas over, and then like take a scrap of paper and, write some notes to myself maybe. So, I will do things like use pen and paper and, take a shower, think about it, or, pace back and forth, or go for a long walk, or curl up in bed or on couch and, whatever. Like I'll use all of those things. But I don't have to have any of those. Like I'll use whatever works for me. I don't have to be at a coffee shop. I don't have to wake up early. I don't have to be doing it late. I don't have to be doing it more. Like there's no routine I have to have at all. Like I can do it anytime, anywhere. I could, do it in the dark. Going to sleep. I could be thinking about miniKanren and turning problems over in my head. And I just have a certain looseness there. And part of it is, yeah, sure, I have a lot of experience with it, but part of it is like, I'm not afraid of it at all. You know what I mean? What was that quote of, from Kill Bill, you shouldn't be afraid of the wood should be afraid of you. miniKanren's my friend, Scheme's my friend. I'm not, it's, I don't know how to explain it better than that. Like they're my friends at this point. So, that's really what I want. And one of the things that Stephen King talks about is he's a huge AC/DC fan, and he likes playing hard rock loud when he's writing. I don't know how loud it is, actually. I should take that back. Like he likes playing AC/DC. Now, it's hard for me to imagine him playing AC/DC quiet. I think he plays it loud. But, like when I'm studying kanji or, trying to do some writing, it's like, okay, I have to be in the right environment. It has to be the right time of day. And I have to have like the right amount of caffeine and the right keyboard or the right pen and paper, and it's all got to be right, and I can't have distractions, and if the light's not right, I need to wear a baseball cap, and all that. And I certainly wouldn't be listening to music, right? Because that'd be a distraction. But it's like, no. Like, why is writing any different than programming? It's like, I don't think it is. Shouldn't be, not for me. It's like, I listen to music when I program. I don't always listen to music. If I work on something really hard, I might stop for a while. But I certainly, if I'm like chilling on a Friday night and I'm hacking for fun, like I'm going to get some music going. Why not? It should be fun. It should be a fun thing, just like it's fun. Like I think me hacking on miniKanren is like Stephen King writing, like in terms of fun. That's just like something I enjoy. Like I would, I just enjoy it. That's just cool. I look forward to, like, I get a night where I can just like hack on it, right? That's like, I value that. So last night I stayed up late. And part of it was like, okay, I want to make some progress on this book. I don't know what's in the book. So let me start just like thinking about that. Now, Stephen King never, or almost never outlines. So he doesn't outline in general. He talks about, I think, 3 of his books when he wrote on writing that he had outlined. And one of them he thought was okay or good, but the other 2 he thought they weren't as fun to write and they didn't turn out as well. So, he's focused on story, not plot, but story. And he likes to be surprised when he's writing. So he doesn't like plot it all out. And I was thinking about that as well. It's like, okay, what if I just want it to be fun? It doesn't have to be perfect. Like I've got these ideas in my head of something I want for this book. And it's like perfect in every way. It's like very precious. I was like, what if I just like mess around, right? Like when I'm hacking on miniKanren, I'm like, oh, this program's going to get me the Turing Award. No. That's not what I'm hacking miniKanren. I'm trying to get the perfect miniKanren program. Like there's no such thing as a perfect miniKanren program. They're fun miniKanren programs and they're like trade-offs, and just mess around with it. I'll write the same program like 10 or 20 different ways, maybe trying to understand the trade-offs. Like none of them are perfect. So, just like stop trying so hard, chillax, Will. Or it's like Ripley to Hudson and Aliens, will you just relax? I don't remember if she says just or not. Will you relax? I forget which one. But yeah, it's like, well, why can't I listen to music? I have a like hacking list. I've got, hacking music lists I listen to when I'm programming. Why can't I listen to it when I'm writing? Like, and why do I have to have everything planned out? Why do I have to have a complete outline of every single thing, if I'm doing this book for fun? And like, why does it have to be, why do I have to, I need this book to be done. I need a complete final draft in like 3 months, and I need this, and it needs to go to print and then, just write, just have fun. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm just going to try to, try to treat writing like indistinguishably from how I go about like hacking on Scheme and miniKanren, especially like miniKanren. miniKanren is just fun. It's just fun to hack on. I love it. And I want the writing to be like that. I don't see any reason that has to be any different. In fact, because this book has miniKanren in it, miniKanren is like a main theme, there's no reason that I literally can't work on it while hacking miniKanren, right? It's like, write something, write something, right? It could be interleave. Stephen King also says, you should write with the door closed for the first draft. You shouldn't show it to anyone. I like to share things with people, but I also think, that's gotten in my way. And, if I'm hacking miniKanren stuff, I don't share that. Like I'm not recording myself hacking mini. I mean, I've tried making some videos where I hacked on miniKanren things, but if it's like a Friday night and I'm just having fun, no, it's just like me having fun. I don't have to record it. Now, hopefully something will come out of it that I can share. Right. Happy to make a video or give a talk or write a paper or something, put it on GitHub or something. But, I don't have to, I can have fun just like messing around with it. The important thing is I play with it, and then I'll have something to actually that's worth talking about, right? Like I'll have something next time I give a talk, it's like worth talking about that. And so, I've tried writing in the open, I've tried all these things to sort of get unstuck. But I think, treating writing the same way as I play with miniKanren, like in a very playful way. I don't know that's actually any different, really. I've been treating it too preciously. I've been trying too hard. So I think I've said this before to some extent, but I feel like much more Like it's like, oh, well, I need to curl up in bed and write. It's like, no, I don't need to. I could, like I said, I can work on miniKanren anywhere, anytime. I mean, I mean that literally. And so like, I don't see why it'd be any different for writing. I just, and try writing without a particular outline or anything. And, just have fun with it, and not have pressure. Not have pressure on myself, not have any sort of deadline as in when I'll finish anything. Just do it. Like I don't feel, maybe there's a paper deadline or something. I mean, there are always paper deadlines, right? It's like, well, I'm working on some miniKanren thing. Hopefully it works out before this talk that I'm giving, or hopefully it works out before this paper deadline. Well, sure, that's fine. But if I don't make that deadline, or if I do make that deadline, that doesn't mean I stop working on it. It's like, it's got nothing to do with it. That's not why I do it. Maybe it's a excuse, or maybe it's a forcing function to get me started. Anyway, enough about that. But last night, I stayed up late, which I do occasionally to kind of reset myself. It's like, all right, I want to make some progress on the writing before I go to sleep. And, after thinking a lot, started writing like new notes to myself and just trying to figure out like, oh, this would be fun. This would be fun to work on. This would be fun to write up, talk about. So I'm going to go for that fun. I think I can do something that'd be really fun. Like I would have fun. Like that's the thing. I have to have fun doing it. I have to have fun writing this book. If I have fun writing it, it'll happen. If I don't have fun writing it, I'll just keep bouncing off of it. So anyway, let's talk about some music. Some music I was listening to last night when I was thinking about book and writing some notes to myself. So, well, in honor of Stephen King, get some AC/DC. For those about to rock, we salute you. Great. And actually, early this morning when I was working on the book, because I really, that is working on the books. They're trying to figure out, what would be fun to write? Oh yeah, this would be really cool. That's working on it. I was listening to some AC/DC, and I got some nerd chills. I'm like, oh yeah, this could be really fun. Right? Like the nerd chills of like, yeah, I want to write about. And one of the things I was thinking is, for this book, I want to write about things I don't know how to do. It's like, sure, I'll put in things I know how to do, but I want to put in a lot of things I don't know how to do. Like, not, here's something I'll figure out how to do and I'll put that in the book. Sure, some of that will be in there, but I'm happy to put things in the book I literally don't know how to do or don't know how to do well. It's like, okay, here's an attempt, right? And it reminds me of that Software Designed for Flexibility book, where it's like, okay, here's the current attempt to try to do these things, try to solve these problems. So, I want to have an aspect of that. So, yeah, I'm excited about working on this. This should be fun. So AC/DC, for those about to rock, Shabayan Records, RIN, great song. It's like very dirty sound in the beginning. It really changes. I love Shabayan Records. So that one I like a lot. LCD Sound System, Losing My Edge. You can change the lyrics to be programming language related. That's very fun. Thou Shalt Always Kill by Dan Lasac versus Scroobius Pip. I really love these two songs. To me, they sound, I mean, even though they're totally different the songs, like there are aspects of those two songs that are similar that I really like. Part of it is me just trying to figure out like, what do I like, with music. And for all of these, well, you don't have to say this for AC/DC, but for Ren and Thou Shalt Always Kill and Losing My Edge, and also for like the, was it Yo, when do Yo play, for these sorts of songs, like Alan Kay had some advice about listening to jazz. Like he's like, if you don't think jazz rocks, this is basically paraphrasing. If you don't think jazz rocks, then like turn it up, listen to it loud. That's how I feel like about these sorts of things. Like if you don't think Shibayan records songs rock, like play them loud. Play them loud. These two songs, Thou Shalt Always Kill and Losing My Edge, I just love the electronic sounds, and then lyrics are great, and yeah, so it's just I like the there's kind of like a repeated electronic sound that modulates over time. It's like little changes. I like that a lot. Okay, well, oh yeah, and then speaking of jazz, I couldn't resist In a Silent Way by Miles Davis. This is my favorite jazz album. I think it came out a decade after Kinda Blue, which is, I guess, the most highly regarded jazz album, maybe, also by Miles Davis. Maybe this is just my personality, also going back to the earlier part of the conversation, but apparently when In a Silent Way came out, it was controversial because a lot of people said that's not even jazz. Maybe that's why I like it. It's like, wow, this is weird. I've never heard anything like that. Yeah, like I'd never heard anything quite like When Do Yo Play. You know, I'd heard lots of things that are kind of similar, but then there were just certain aspects of that song like, whoa, I've never heard this before. So I just really like things that are different. Yeah. As thou shalt always kill. Thou shalt not make repetitive generic music. Thou shalt not make repetitive generic music. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's probably a long one, but yeah. Hope you all are doing well, and hope I should make a B to GM again soon. Oh, I also have a request for making videos that are like very condensed. Technical videos or non-technical videos, but the B to GM things are more like a day 9 daily, something like that. They're kind of like hangout videos to some extent. And, they just have lots of, it's like sort of Will Radio, right? Like whatever I've been talking about, I'm sure I could condense them somewhat. Although if you condense this video too much, I think you would lose the feeling of it. But that's a request I've gotten, is something more condensed. And certainly I've thought about that continuations video I made, which is like way, way, way too long. And certainly could be way condensed and made way better. So that's an example of a video where it's like, oh yeah, I could make a video that would be, a sixth as long and probably much better. Maybe, yeah. So that's something I think about. If you think that's like a cool thing, please let me know. I certainly would consider it. Yeah. I mean, I still got the B to GM stuff going, and I should be able to get a few more of those videos before I got more travel. So, like to keep going with that series. It's easier to start a long series than it is to continue keeping it going and finish it up. So, if I do start a new series, it's like condensed videos. Like those sound like they're a lot of prep. So I'd have to think that through. But I do want to get back to the B to GM. But I also recognize that if I'm traveling, that kind of thing, that makes it tricky. It takes some time to recover from the travel and all that, and to catch up. All right. Hope you all are doing well, and hope to make another video soon. Bye-bye.